A new process for 3D printing things could pave the way for lighter, faster aircraft that potentially fly further on the same amount of fuel. Today's airplanes are held together with thousands of metal rivets and fasteners. That's because the lightweight but strong aluminum alloys used for their frames are considered unwieldable. Try to weld them, and you get a phenomenon called hot cracking, in which the finished alloy weakens and fractures as it cools. This and other adverse welding effects also stand in the way of 3D printing high-strength aluminum alloy parts. When researchers have tried, the resulting laser-fused mass flakes away at the welding area like a stale biscuit.
Then they ask, how far out of their league do online daters tend to go when pursuing a partner? I think people are optimistic realists. In other words, they found that both men and women tended to pursue mates just 25% more desirable than themselves. So they are being optimistic, but they are also taking into account their own relative position within this overall desirability hierarchy. And the study did have a few more lessons for people on the market. I think one of the take-home messages from this study is that women could probably afford to be more aspirational in their mate pursuit. To examine the bird's origin, scientists sequence mitochondrial DNA found within macaw bones from two sites in New Mexico, Chaco Canyon, and the Mimbres region. Turns out nearly 3/4 of the birds had identical mitochondrial genome sequences, meaning the ancient birds came from the same maternal line. That suggests that we're all the products of the breeding operation, perhaps in modern-day northern Mexico, rather than a random collection of wild-caught birds.
I'd recommend that you'll try to get hold of English in the Southern Hemisphere by Nayland and Watts, as this provides an excellent overview of the topics that we're going to cover in this module. It's really our primary text. It has particularly strong sections on the history of English in Australia and New Zealand, examining in some depth how the language has developed in these countries. The sections on phonology and on vocabulary will be invaluable when you're doing the written assignment, which I'm going to be telling you about in a moment once I've given you the details of a couple of other essential references.
We can gain an accurate knowledge of the past only if we know the age of the different sources being investigated. Without this information, historians and archaeologists could not be sure of the order in which different areas were settled, used, and abandoned. They would not always be sure if a particular object was real or forgery. Archaeologists look for clues that indicate that an area is worth digging up. Clues may come from the writings of someone in the past who has described the existence of a particular town or burial site. Sometimes sites are accidentally discovered during excavation for the construction of buildings, roads, dams, or railways. There are some common reasons to explain why early civilizations developed in different places and different times around the world. Each ancient civilization that has been discovered developed in places where there was a reliable water supply, usually on the banks of major rivers, and where the soil was fertile enough to grow crops.
Today science is advancing at an amazing speed and everything of our life has changed beyond recognition. It constitutes an attempt to conquer the forces of nature and aims to give man increasing power over his surroundings. In the daily life of a man, science is visible. For instance, he can now travel much faster and more comfortably than in the past. Bullock carts in villages and horse carriages in town are being replaced by tractors, trucks, auto carriages and cars. Invention of steam engine revolutionized travel. Then came to the sensational invention of aeroplanes. Similarly, quick means of communication have brought the peoples of the world together. We can talk to any person through telephone and mobiles. Electronic mail, email, has made the transmission of any message across internet to any person in this world. Further, it has made the use of radio both as a means of information and recreation. In times of distress, wireless telegraphy renders extraordinary service.
Membrane technologies are applied to remove water constituents at the ionic level, and calculating membrane rejection and salt passage is critical when evaluating membrane performance and determining if a system is producing the desired product water quality. Filtration using MF and UF membranes relies on distinct pore diameters that act as a sieve to effectively separate liquids from solids and larger molecular weight constituents in a feed stream. This is commonly referred to as the barrier layer, with the membrane acting as a barrier to allow desirable components to pass while rejecting undesirable compounds. Water molecules and a variety of dissolved species within the water are small enough to pass through the MF and UF pores. But solids larger than the pore diameter cannot pass through and remain on the surface until the membranes are backwashed, flushed, or cleaned.
Well, in 2004, we integrated ticketing in Southeast Queensland, so we have introduced a paper ticket that allowed you to travel across all the three modes in Southeast Queensland, so bus, train, and ferry. And the second stage of integrated ticketing is the introduction of a smart card, and the smart card will enable people to store value, so to put value on the card, and then to use the card for traveling around the system.